Today I'm speaking with Fred Riley, who you may have noticed from other podcasts, and before we get into the subject matter, would you please tell us your practice name and your contact information?
Sure, we're Riley Individual, Family and Marriage Counseling, and our phone number is 801-657-0163, and you can also find us online at gettingbacktolife.com. That's gettingback2life.com.
So this is a subject that I've been looking forward to. You don't know what it is yet, but I do. So tell us what the subject's going to be.
So today we're talking about custody, especially in particular with younger children. As individuals are looking at divorce, obviously custody and how to work with the kids and time spent with the kids is a very important topic, but a hard one.
Yes. And especially, there's a lot of, like in my line of work as a divorce attorney, you hear a lot of things about children can choose where to live at the age of 10, 12, 14, 16. I've even heard people say at the age of 18, but of course at the age of 18 they're adults, so it doesn't really matter. Of course they have the choice as to where they're going to go. And so I hear things, and you probably hear a lot of things too, especially on the psychological side of things, as to what's best for children. And there's a lot of things going around that, correct me if I'm wrong, but the opinion has changed in the last couple of decades as to what people may have believed and done 20 years ago.
Oh yes, definitely. There's a lot of new research out that is indicating that we need to be more aware of certain things, especially with the younger children in terms of time spent with primary caregivers and secondary caregivers.
And when you hear about new research, some people would go, oh yeah, just wait and the research will change and you can find research that'll suit whatever you want. But my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, because I'd rather that I be corrected than you just go along with whatever I say, is that they've taken the research, or at least the opinions and the studies that have taken place in the past, and actually studied them again and subjected them to more rigorous standards to see if they really held up. So when we talk about new research, we're not talking about something that somebody was unhappy with, so they did some new research to get the outcome they desired. They actually said, let's find out if these opinions and these concepts hold up under scrutiny.
Correct.
Would that be correct?
That's absolutely correct. They want to test and retest the original findings. They're taking a look at work from Piaget, Bowlby, Ainsworth, and a lot of the early individuals that did studies on children. And they're finding that a lot of things hold up, but we're also finding through case law, through judgments and so forth, we're getting more information now on how these children are turning out.
And what we're finding, correct me if I'm wrong, and then you take it away,
Sure.
is that what you may have heard when you got a divorce, or when your parents got divorced, for example, if you're in that situation, and what you were told and what the conventional wisdom was, is not the same.
Correct.
There are, as you said, some things have held up, but there are other things that have been believed, made sense, maybe even seemed intuitive, that the research simply doesn't bear out.
That's
Let's talk
correct.
a little bit about that. What would be one, for example?
Well, one of those that we're seeing that we need to take a new look at is this idea of a primary caregiver. It's obviously more common to support the mother and her role in caring for the child. But what they're finding is that there's significant developmental tasks that need to take place, and that the father can play an equal role in that. What the research is finding is that although there's certain things that mothers can do, both the father and the mother bring unique experiences, unique perspectives that are very helpful in nurturing that child and helping them transition through the divorce, for example. The child does usually have a primary caregiver, but they're able to develop multiple attachments, but usually with the two, the mother and the father.
And so, it's not a perfect analogy, but C.S. Lewis talked about, which part of the scissors is most important. And no one ever asked that question.
Right.
Scissors consist of two blades that are working together. Now, that's not exactly analogous, because you really could say, well, apart, the scissors really can't do very well.
Correct.
They must work together. But still, you can say, and correct me if I'm wrong, you've got the mother who may be, especially in Utah, where there's a lot of family-friendly policies and a lot of family-friendly religious beliefs. So the mother may be spending more time with the kids, may spend more time serving the children's needs,
Right.
or at least personal day-to-day needs. But that does not mean that a father is, even if he may be the secondary caregiver, means that he can simply be shunted to the side and say, well, you can come and spend a few weekends with your kids so that you don't lose touch with them.
Correct. Yeah, what we're finding is that frequency, especially we're talking like age 2, 3 and under, that transitions, it used to be thought that transitions were problematic. And going back to the scissor analogy, the idea is that both parts play an important role and that kids seem to do really well with those transitions. Once those transitions are familiar, they can benefit from access to both sides of the scissors, if you will.
So the idea that children need a home base and
Right.
that they should rarely move from that home base, and the idea behind the every other weekend you
Right.
hear about a lot, just doesn't hold much water.
It doesn't until you get into older ages, maybe 7 or 8, where children can better manage time and understand what the concept of time. But early on, the studies are starting to show that every couple days, okay, children do really well with that. They are able to establish familiarities with the different routines and look forward to those. And also one of the things we actually need to talk about is that time away from the caregiver, whether it be the father or whether it be the mother. The children start to exhibit signs of poor attachment in terms of anger, anxiety, resentment, those types of things. We think that we're giving them more of a consistent place, but what we're doing is with those longer distances between transitions, we're kind of introducing them to this strange situation, which studies are showing, you know what, we don't need to make father or mother a stranger. That causes more anxiety. The more familiar they are with them, okay, the healthier those attachments are made. And as they get older, we're talking about issues outside of the marriage, okay? We're talking about key developmental tasks that the parents are responsible, that I think with divorce we're so tied into time with the children, but we're not thinking about raising that child for the world ahead of it. And these children need to learn about consistency, they need to learn about predictabilities, and they need to learn how to soothe in between those transitions. They need to learn, they need a secure, nurturing environment. It doesn't, I think sometimes we shoot ourselves in the foot when we battle over who gets that child more versus the other.
And I just thought of a better analogy and wanted
Okay.
to, it would be one thing, I might say, if you and I are close friends or relatives, and then you move overseas or something like that, if I were to write you a letter every couple of weeks,
Right.
but it was 5 pages long.
Okay.
So I made sure that I was really spending a lot of time every 2 weeks to kind of catch you up,
Right.
as opposed to just friending you on Facebook or sending you a short, maybe one paragraph email from time to time. Which would you prefer? Now I can say for myself, I wouldn't want to hear from you every hour of every day,
No.
but if you checked in with me every couple of days or so, then I think that the closeness and the bond would be stronger than if I wait every 2 weeks to read something that's 5 pages long. I may get wrapped up in other things, I may not have the patience to read it, but consistent dosage, as opposed to just waiting until things start to get weak and then hitting me with a big 5-page letter. Is there some truth to that?
Yeah, very much so. That consistent dosage. The thing is, when we're talking about dosages, we're talking about attachments. Attachment is a genetically driven phenomenon, and so our child's going to make that attachment somewhere, and we might as well put aside our differences if we can to allow that child to formulate that attachment, that bond with that male or female role model. Even though we may not like each other, okay, that dosage, if you will, the more frequency, okay, they're going to get it somewhere. We might as well say, okay, how can we make that happen here?
Yeah, I think about that. My dad was a 9 to 5 kind of guy, and my mom was a stay-at-home mom. I spent far more time with my mother, but I can't really say that I got to know my mom better than my dad, because my dad came home every night,
Correct.
And he'd spend fewer minutes with me, but there was that consistent relationship.
Exactly.
And I found ways to connect with him in shorter periods of time, but it wasn't because I waited every weekend to spend
Correct.
all day with him. It was that I knew that, in fact, I came to respect the fact that he was able to juggle a working schedule but still make time for his kids
Right.
and that sort of thing. Just as my mom spent all the time with us during the day, but then she was also in a singing group and she would do that to
Okay.
kind of get a break from things. And I felt like, yeah, I have a balanced relationship in my family and with my parents. As an attorney, sometimes I have to wonder why it is that when we can have that relationship between kids be more consistent and frequent with both parents, even if it may not be equal amounts of time, although I'm not against equal amounts of time.
Okay.
It's not like I see anything inherently wrong with that.
Okay.
It seems like some people will say, no, we just can't keep having the kids ping pong back and forth. And what you're saying is that young kids really don't seem to notice.
No.
Older kids may notice but can still deal with it without feeling put upon.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And I think for whatever reason, our thought process kind of goes contrary to that. But I think as these kids grow up, what they'll find is that they'll appreciate that shared time. As a matter of fact, kids are very sensitive to these arguments, these conflicts and so forth. And what studies show is that smooth transition, minus the conflicts, okay, allows children to formulate very good, healthy relationships in the future, but also it helps them manage their anxiety better. The transitions themselves are not the problem. Okay, it's the conflict or the arguments or the battling between those transitions or about those transitions that causes the anxiety. With these transitions, these children learn how to self-soothe rather than spending a couple days trying to get to know somebody every 5 days in between.
So, I mean, this is a question that I think would be fair to ask of people. I mean, do you have a bias personally as a marriage and family therapist as to what you think is best for kids, or do you let the evidence point you in a direction, even if you may not personally like it?
You know, I don't know that I guess I have more of a bias towards shared time, and that's just because a lot of the work I did in college and that I see here in the office is based upon attachments. And so I think I do the best I can to, you know, obviously there are times where I worry about maybe one parent or the other, but I also see great value in making sure that parents have as equal access as possible.
For the benefit of the parents?
No, for the benefits of, sorry, for the benefit of the child.
No, don't be sorry. And that's the thing, is I think some people feel like there may be this, oh, well, it's not about the parents, it's about the kids. And I think what's interesting is that, well, this is one of those situations where more time with the parents, which usually makes parents happy,
Yes.
actually makes the kids happier too.
Definitely, it makes them happy. It gives them a consistent world. I think when we think about transition, maybe that's more of us thinking as adults that that's inconsistent. Okay, but we got to think about the children, and they can handle that transition pretty well. They're working on things like object permanence and object consistency, or consistency is what or constancy. Sorry, object constancy, and the idea is that they need to learn and trust that these people, important figures, will reappear back in their life within a relatively decent amount of time.
And one last question. I mean,
Yes.
do the parents end up being better parents when they have more consistent contact with their kids?
Definitely. They establish those routines as well. I've visited with a lot of parents who have split custody, and what happens is they find that they're trying to reestablish routines with these children. They're trying to undo the damages, so to speak, that they find in terms of fault with the other caretakers. And when we have those transitions, okay, those kids get used to what's going on in your particular home. And if we have long bouts of time in between, we are spending a lot of that time band-aiding or healing or what have you, versus, especially again, we're talking early ages, okay, having our routine, not worrying so much about what the other person's doing, because your child's going to adapt to what that other parent's doing. I think so often, and I think it makes parenting easier rather than trying to fix and undo and reteach. Okay, these children adjust to those different environments.
Well, would you be willing to talk to us again on another occasion about what the components of a custody evaluation are
Sure.
in Utah?
Yeah,
And what the rule is, and how that unfolds, the time it takes, and what kind of costs can be involved, how the upper limits or the lower limits and things like
yeah,
that.
I'd be happy to do that.
Okay, so we'll talk about that on another time.
Sure.
But for now, I think we've set a good foundation for understanding what children really want, what they benefit from most, what they need, and how custody awards can be structured for younger children and as children get older. Oh, I guess one other thing.
Yes.
That arrangement can change then, right? It doesn't
Oh,
have
yes.
to be set in stone when the children are 4 and be the same schedule all the way through their teens and that sort of a thing.
No, as a matter of fact, what we find is as children get older, we can expand those times, okay? The children do better at soothing and their anxiety and so forth. As they get older, they understand time better. They understand the consistency or the constancy, if you will, of established relationships.
And they don't need as much time around their parents. I have a 16
Correct.
and a 17-year-old, and they don't want to spend as much time around their mom and dad because they're maturing into adults. And
Exactly.
developing other relationships.
Exactly. As a matter of fact, that time spent with one or the other parent, as they get older, is more thought about what kids are going to be there to be played with versus that particular relationship.
Okay. Thank you very much, and before we go, again, please give us your name, practice, and contact information if anyone would like to speak to you more. And if they have questions about some of these studies, would they be able to make an appointment with you and just kind of learn about those in the course of things, or is that something that you wouldn't be available for?
No, definitely. I'd love to sit down with people and point them towards these studies, talk to them about the research that I've read. We're getting more and more access to good material. And I think the educated parent is the best parent, and so I'd be more than happy to sit down with anybody interested in these studies or questions about their particular situation. So you can get a hold of us. Again, I'm Fred Riley. We've got several counselors here to serve you, but we're Riley Individual, Family and Marriage Counseling, and you can get a hold of us at 801-657-0163. Or you can find us online at gettingback2life.com. That's gettingbacktolife.com.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'll talk to you later.
Okay, thank you.